This is Karun Chandhok, just back from the Bahrain Grand Prix. What a fantastic race we had. I think it was the third race in a row where F1 2017 has continued to deliver a really interesting battle. No question about it. The Ferrari versus Mercedes battle is going to go all the way down to the wire. But yeah, another strategic contest, lots of outside factors at play as well. So let's start from the top. I think, first of all, qualifying. Valtteri Bottas getting his first pole position. I was really pleased with Valtteri. He's a really nice guy. I've known him for many years, and really happy for him to, it sort of underlined that belief that Mercedes had in him to get him into the team. Didn't quite work out on Sunday for him, but we'll come back to that. The reality is, to out-qualify Lewis Hamilton is no mean feat. So, yeah, really good effort. And, he talked me through his lap on Channel 4, for those of you who watched our coverage back at home. And it was a really good lap. A couple of little mistakes, really on the edge, but I think overall he should be pretty pleased with that. I know he was a bit disappointed on Sunday, but I think qualifying was a really good effort. Ferrari was a big surprise of qualifying, in my opinion. I was surprised how far back they were compared to Mercedes, and I think they were as well. It's interesting how in the first two races they were right up there, but for whatever reason, temperature, circuit related, nobody could really pinpoint it, and really we haven't got enough of a data set to draw a trend. We need to see a few more races, but also the cars are evolving, updates. Ferrari had a new front wing we saw on Friday free practice, and it's a constantly moving goalpost, and I think that's really interesting. Red Bull did a good job, I thought, in free practice and quali. They were definitely closer this weekend than they have been first couple of races. I remember, when I flew out of London on Wednesday night to get to Bahrain Thursday morning, there's a guy from Red Bull checking into the flight right next to me, and he had, the porters lined up with huge boxes and boxes of bits that he was carrying out to Bahrain. So yeah, interesting to see them really pushing on as well. But Hülkenberg, I think the other star of qualifying. I'd be remiss not to mention his performance in qualifying. I think that was very good. Best of the rest. They don't seem to have it in race pace though. When you look at FP2 and also the Grand Prix, they don't seem to have the race pace to match Williams or Force India, and I think that's something they'd be working on. But really good job, Nick Chester, Alan Permain, the technical team there. They've worked with Nico, and I think Nico has given them a bit of setup direction, has given them some guidance in which way they want to head with the car to unlock its potential. And to be best of the rest on the grid, backing up his 7th place from Shanghai, I think was a very good effort in qualifying. So in the Grand Prix, Lewis obviously starting on the dirty side, hampered him, and then we had Valtteri and Seb up front. Valtteri seemed to be really struggling. Mercedes talked about the fact that his first set of tyres on the grid, they weren't able to set the right tyre pressures, and that hampered his first stint. But even beyond that first stint, he didn't seem to have the pace of Lewis or Sebastian. And that's interesting for me. Is that a clear sign that Mercedes need to start favouring Lewis when it comes to those strategy calls and decision making? And I think they're very conscious. I think Mercedes are very good and very conscious of being unbiased to one side of the garage. They've done that in the past. We saw Nico and Lewis. They tried really hard to be fair and equal, and I think now though they're in a different dynamic. They're in a different World Championship battle. They're fighting against another team, and the enemy is no longer within, the enemy is outside. And you do wonder whether they need to start rethinking their approach in terms of favouring one driver or the other. I'm sure it's a hard decision. It's very early in the season to resign one driver to a number 2 status, but maybe that's what it's going to take. We've seen, look, historically, back in '86, Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell fighting each other for Williams, and it was Prost who snuck into the World Championship. And there have been a few occasions where drivers are taking points off each other, and ultimately in the same team, and ultimately it allows someone else to come through. So yeah, very tricky stuff there for Mercedes to deal with. And if you look at this race specifically, the opening part of the Grand Prix, Valtteri didn't have the pace to pull away, and you could see, in fact, all the way down to 5th with Max and Daniel as well. There were sort of 5 of them in a train. And Ferrari bit the bullet on lap 10. They went for the undercut, and you do wonder in those sort of instances, if Valtteri had the tyre pressure issue, which was really hampering him, why didn't Mercedes pull him in? Or on the flip side, why didn't they pull Lewis in and give Lewis an undercut? Perhaps I could have jumped both Sebastian and Valtteri. So, I mean, I was looking through some lap times, just replaying the race and trying to understand on the live timing data. And when Vettel pitted, Valtteri's lap on that lap was a 1:37.6, and Vettel came out 23.2 seconds behind. But then Mercedes curiously left their cars out, and over the next couple of laps, the gap came down 20.5, 18.0, and in fact, by the time the safety car came out on lap 13, Valtteri was only 16.1 ahead of Sebastian. So if there had been no safety car, Sebastian would have come out 7 seconds up the road. In effect, the safety car actually helped the Mercedes drivers close, and they actually made 7 seconds. When you look at the sector times in the middle sector of the lap, the Mercedes guys, so let's say Valtteri did a 42.4 second middle sector, Seb did 49.1. So in that one sector alone, they gained 7 seconds, let alone the last part of the lap. So, despite the safety car, Ferrari still managed to get track position, and that was that sort of 3-lap phase and that decision making that went around that lap 10 phase of the first pit stop was really the critical moment of the Grand Prix. And I think in hindsight, Mercedes will wonder, should they have gone for a more aggressive undercut? We knew the soft tyres were hanging on. They could have, in the end they pitted 3 laps later and was fine at the end. So, yeah, and I think that's something they need to think about going forward. And I'm sure they will. There's some extremely clever people on that Mercedes pit wall. James Vowles, great strategist, Andrew Shovlin, the chief engineer, Pete Bonington, Tony Ross, the 2 race engineers, some very, very clever people there. And I'm sure they'll work it out. But fundamentally, I believe it's a philosophical issue of, do we carry on in terms of fairness and let the driver in front have first call, etc., or do we start to favor one driver over another and use that tactic to combat Sebastian? Once again, Sebastian did what he does best. When he gets out front, he's gone. This is why the guy's won so many Grand Prix. He knows how to win races. He managed that gap to Lewis. I think Lewis did exactly what any racing driver in the world would have done when he came to backing up Daniel into the pit lane. The mistake he made perhaps was not backing Daniel up enough before the pit entry line. Daniel did an interview with us on Channel 4 where he talked about the fact that before the pit entry line you can slow down, but once you cross the pit entry line in the pit lane itself, you can't slow somebody down. And when you look at the pit stop times, I'm just looking at my other screen, Vettel's total pit stop, pit in to pit out was 24.7. Valtteri lost time, don't forget, because they had to let the traffic come past, and his was 28.3, so he lost 3.6 seconds, which in effect, because of the safety car, was actually also the difference between getting out ahead of Sebastian or not. Lewis's stop was 30.7, so that was 6 seconds total time slower than Vettel. And that shuffled him way out of the order, and then he got the 5-second penalty. But yeah, really good Grand Prix, fascinating battles up front. But once again, I think further proof that Sebastian and Lewis are really staking their claim to being undisputed number ones in their team. Valtteri did very well to bounce back from China. I'll be interested to see how he goes from here. We know he's good at Russia. He was good there with Williams before, and we'll see. So I've gone on quite a bit with the battle at the front. But just a couple other mentions. Felipe Massa, I thought, had a very good race for Williams. Lance was unfortunate. I think Carlos will, when he watches the replay, will slightly regret that maneuver. I think Hulkenberg had a tough race in terms of race pace, as I mentioned before. But Checo Perez was another star for me. Tough qualifying, got unfortunately because the yellow flags, didn't get to do his last lap, knocked out in Q1. But such a good race. He did a very good job in the first 2-3 laps, and then had good pace to go with it to rack up good points. So that was for me, he was actually probably the driver of the day, Perez. He did a really good job. So we got a couple of weeks away before we head back to Sochi for the next round of the World Championship. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But no question about it, Ferrari versus Mercedes is going to keep going.
The 6 hours of Silverstone, I mean, what an immense battle it was. It went down to the wire. We had just a few seconds between the first and the second. Winner was Toyota in the hands of Sebastian Buemi, Katsuki Nakajima and Anthony Davidson. And I think I lost a little bit of weight through that race because we had wet conditions, we had some technical issues, the traffic, very intense battles, and an overtaking maneuver just with 6 minutes to go. So really cool stuff. But how did it unfold? So we had the start, Toyota 1 and 2 leading the way, extremely good in the first stint, opening a gap up to 6-8 seconds, maybe a bit more at times. But already in the end of the first stint, I could see that we couldn't pull away anymore. By then Porsche found its rhythm, and through the traffic, the net car performance was eliminated. It was then down a race of how to manage the boost, how to manage the fuel cuts, and in the end of the day, both teams have been on a similar pace. We had a similar phenomenon last year when Toyota was never as good as the others in qualifying, but in the race we've been there. So we can expect really cool racing for the next few races to come. It's a very intense battle. It was down to the drivers, especially in rainy conditions, where we saw different strategies unfolding. We had Porsche opting for intermediate tires, and we from Toyota stayed with the slick tires. The reason there for that was not really a different sort of strategy. We would have gone for intermediate tires if we hadn't had just a pit stop 2 minutes before the rain started coming down. So we were on the dry tires, and there was no choice other than for Anthony to man up. He did a sensational job, kept the car on the track, didn't lose too much time, and it saved us one pit stop. In the end, it was a zero game. Both cars came out again quite equal, yet we had a 20 seconds lead, more or less, and then came the safety car. After an accident of Jose Maria Lopez, who got caught out with a little wet patch in Stowe. He went to hospital, so I hope he's all okay. He's not serious, there's nothing serious, but he has pain in the back, so routine check. Hopefully, Jose, you will be back with us very soon. We need you for the test actually in a few days. Race then continued, and Porsche did a very clever strategy with staying out with Brandon, very short splash and dash in the end. They took the lead, and then it was a race between Brandon and Seb. They are friends, they lived together for a few years, so it was quite interesting to watch them. Both were very tough to each other in turn 3-4, but Seb had the upper hand, had newer tires and a bit more speed, and man, he went for a real cool move and then brought the car home with rain again to come, but he was safe. So I really enjoyed that LMP one battle. It's good publicity and a good show for the sport. It was fought very hard, and can't wait for the next race event in Spa. For people who are really interested in details in the WEC, I mean, it is a fascinating sport. The technology is mind-blowing. We have way more than 1,000 horsepower, four-wheel drive, but also we have strict rules which try to limit the amount of money the manufacturers investing in the sport. So for this year we have 2 different aero packages allowed. One, of course, or the main package is the Le Mans aero package, which is low downforce for the very high speed track in France, and for the other tracks is high downforce. But we have a very different approach this year, where Porsche has not done any work on the high downforce package. They have optimized the entire winter on the low downforce package, and they arrived in Silverstone on low downforce. Whilst we at Toyota, we have brought out our high downforce package for the testing and for this race. That's maybe the reason as well. We had a little bit the upper hand because we had more downforce, and Silverstone, with all the high speed flowing corners, rewards the high downforce. So yeah, that was now in our hands. In Spa, it is just a track which is in between the 2 downforce packages, so I guess the gap's going to be really tight there. Le Mans, both teams will go low downforce, and then in the end of the season, very curious what Porsche will bring up with the high downforce package. The reason they're doing it is they want to spend more time in the wind tunnel to optimize that package. So you can expect the championship really unfolding all throughout the season and having a great influence on the race. And it's not just about downforce, because the amount of aerodynamics you carry is also the amount of drag you have. Influences a great deal of your fuel and fuel efficiency. More drag means you burn more fuel, so you have more fuel cuts. You get faster around the corner. That, however, needs less fuel. So I start to confuse you now, and it is really, really complex. So small, subtle changes do have a large effect on our machines, and it still is also down to the drivers how he drives. So please keep up to date, stay tuned on this blog, and I'll try to explain it better next time.